The night has its own way of warping reality. In the bright chaos of the day, strange things can easily be overlooked. But in the deep quiet of the night, and places that have been abandoned, the truth always finds a way to crawl out. Take, for instance, the Nightshade Pharmacy. For 15 years, it had been nothing more than a dark stain on the edge of the city limits. Boarded up windows, the thick scent of old dust, and a tragic history guarded by brick walls. A perfect setting for something to rot in silence. For a man named Alex, that's me, the Nightshade was a last resort. A security contract with an insane hourly rate and only two major caveats. I was not to enter the basement lab, and I was to work completely alone. Naturally, I accepted. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I certainly believed in bills, and the money they were offering to watch an empty building every night sounded like a terrifyingly good deal. What I didn't know was that the pharmacy wasn't abandoned. It was waiting for a new pharmacist. My first shift started at 11 p.m. The interior of the Nightshade was frozen in time, like a museum of obsolescence. Aisles of yellowed plastic bottles, dusty shelves of expired compounds, and the deep, penetrating smell of antiseptic and mold. It was oppressive. The incident that closed the place down, the one everyone whispered about, was the disappearance of the head pharmacist, a man named Elias Thorne. He didn't quit, he simply vanished mid-shift. His jacket was still draped over his chair, his ledger open on the counter. The police found nothing, concluded foul play, and eventually the case went cold. It had all the hallmarks of a cheap, unsolved true crime story. But being there, alone, the story felt painfully real. The first few hours of my shift were boring. I sat behind the main counter, scrolling through my phone, trying to convince myself that the stillness was just the natural silence of an old building. Around 1 a.m., the lights started to act up. Not the main lights, they were off, but the one lone fluorescent bulb above the main counter. It flickered, giving off a sharp, aggressive BZZT sound every few seconds. It wasn't just annoying, it was isolating. It made the darkness beyond the counter seem deeper, denser. Then came the sounds. They were small at first. A tiny, almost imperceptible scrape from the pharmacy area behind the wall. I ignored it, attributing it to the building settling, to rats, or to my own paranoia. But the scraping evolved. It became a soft, rhythmic clink, clink, clink. The sound of glass against ceramic, like someone was quietly stirring something in a mortar and pestle. I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight and moved toward the pharmacy. The closer I got, the stronger the chemical smell became, masking the mold and dust. It was sharp, like formaldehyde, but with a sweet, rotten undertone. I shined the beam across the counter. Nothing. Everything was untouched. Yet, as I stood there, bathed in the sickly green light of the flickering bulb, I noticed that something had changed on the stainless steel prep counter. A single small glass vial, clearly labeled with the name Thorne's Blend No. 4, had been moved an inch from its previous spot. Just an inch. Enough to notice, not enough to be proof. The fear that hit me wasn't a sudden jolt. It was a slow, icy realization. I wasn't alone, and whatever it was working. The stirring sounds intensified over the next hour. I retreated to the counter, my heart hammering against my ribs, struggling with the self-doubt. Was I hallucinating? Was the isolation finally getting to me? It was then I saw the piece of paper under the counter. It was a standard prescription slip, wrinkled and stained, probably dropped by Elias Thorne years ago. But the handwriting on it was frantic, angular, and barely legible. It wasn't a prescription. It was a series of desperate, scrawled notes about a compound. Mix, test, not 30, must be 43. Elias, it means to finish, the last prescription. And underneath, an unnerving repeating doodle of an infinity symbol that looked too much like a distorted human eye. This wasn't the work of a sane man who simply vanished. This was the remnant of a terrible, consuming madness. I remembered the single rule: do not enter the basement lab. That was where Thorn did his serious compounding, and that was where the sounds were strongest now. Not stirring anymore, but a loud, deliberate smash, followed by the scrape of something heavy being dragged across concrete. I knew I shouldn't go down, but the idea that Thorn had found a way to continue his work, that the last prescription was still being prepared, was an irresistible, horrifying hook. I opened the hatch to the basement. A wave of musty, cold air rushed up, carrying that strange, rotten, sweet chemical smell. The staircase was narrow, wooden, and covered in spiderwebs. I descended slowly, the beam of my flashlight shaking. The basement lab was a nightmare of rusty equipment, defunct burners, and dusty glassware. The noise stopped the moment my foot hit the concrete floor. Complete silence, except for the constant, heavy drip, drip, drip of water from somewhere unseen. I swept the flashlight around the room. It stopped on a dusty chalkboard. It was covered in complex chemical formulas, but in the center, large and clear, was a drawing of a human torso with key organs circled and labeled with Latin names. Below it, in the same frantic handwriting from the prescription slip, was a final entry. 43. Finished. I am the host. My blood turned to ice. Elias Thorn hadn't disappeared. He had completed his experiment on himself, and whatever the final compound was, it hadn't killed him. It had simply made him part of the building, part of the work, eternally seeking the next ingredient. I spun around, flashlight raised. Nothing. Just the shadows and the drip, drip, drip of water. But then I saw it. On the wall opposite the chalkboard, there was a small, dusty mirror. As my light hit it, the reflection staring back wasn't just me. It was me, but thinner, grayer, with wide, frantic eyes that seemed to belong to another era. It was a flash of Elias Thorn's face superimposed onto my own. And from the shadows beside the mirror, I heard a wet, guttural whisper. Not in my ears, but in my skull. The Nightshade needs its next shift. It needs the last ingredient. I didn't try to reason. I scrambled up the stairs, slammed the metal door shut, and ran. I didn't grab my bag. I didn't punch the clock. I didn't even look back. I just ran out into the safety of the dark city street. The check for that night's shift, a huge sum, arrived the next morning. I never cashed it. I just burned the check in the prescription slip, watching Elias Thorn's frantic handwriting turn to ash. I got a job at a diner a few weeks later. The pay is terrible, but the morning light is real, and the sounds I hear are just plates clattering. But sometimes when I'm alone in my apartment and the darkness outside is absolute, I can still hear that faint, distant sound. The slow, rhythmic clink, clink, clink of glass against ceramic. I often wonder who took the shift after me, and if they ever finished the Nightshade's last prescription.